Let's take a look at the first 4 problems on the practice test. Starting with this first one, 480% expressed as a mixed number in simplest form. So one thing I know that anytime I see a percent symbol, I know that means out of 100, because that's what percent means. So if I look at this first one where it says 480%, I can think of that as 480 per 100. Now they asked it for a mixed number in simplest form, so I know that's 4 and 80 100ths, and I can reduce that to 4 and 8 tenths, which can be reduced to 4 and 4/5. So that's one way to do that one. I can also think of it as this is something that's a percent that no longer wants to be a percent. So if I take this 48 and I divide it by 100%, if I take that 48% and divide by 100%, that gives me 480 over 1 times, because when I divide, I do the reciprocal. And when I multiply, I get 480 over 100, which takes me right back to here, and I'd follow these exact same steps all the way through. When I look at the next one, it says 7% expressed as a decimal. 7% means 7 per 100, and 7 per 100 is also 700ths, and this is also 700ths, so 0.07. The next one's a little bit harder. This is not very friendly when it comes to 100. They want me to make this into a percent. Well, if the denominator was like 10 or 20 or 25 or 50, those will all be great, but this 3 is not so great. So what I'm going to do is I know that anytime I want to make something into a percent, I multiply it by 100%. So I'm going to take 4 and 2/3. I'm going to multiply it by 100%, but I know when I'm multiplying stuff like this, I have to turn it into improper. So I'm going to take this 4 and 2/3, and I'm going to make it into 14 over 3 times 100%. I'm going to put as 100 over 1. So it's going to give me 1400 over 3%. And then now I'm going to use my calculator, because this is not an easy one. If I check that out, it looks like I can pull 466 wholes, 3/3 out of 1400, but it leaves me with 2/3 left over. So this ends up being 466 and 2/3%. That one's definitely a little bit harder, but I know that anytime something wants to be a percent, if I just multiply it by 100% and let my calculator help me through that, I should be able to do it just fine. Last one, express as a percent. So this wants to become a percent. So if I know I've got 22 1/50ths, it wants to be a percent. So I'm going to multiply it by 100% over 1. It gives me 2200 over 150%. I'm going to let my calculator do the work on this, and that's going to become 14 2/3%. Now normally I'd stop there, but they say round to the nearest whole number. So 14 2/3 is actually closer to 15%. That's what my answer would be on this one. As I look at the next ones, they want me to work my way through here and find out what 30% of 250 inches are. Now I like to use bar models just to keep things organized. So what I'm going to say is that this represents all the inches. 100% of the inches is 250 inches. They only want to know what 30% of it is. So I got to find that piece. If I know that 100% is 250, and I know that I'm trying to reach 30%, if I can find 1%, I can easily get to 30%. So if I divide this by 100 and divide this by 100, keeping the ratio the same, this becomes 2.5. And then if I want to get from 1 to 30, if I multiply this by 30 and I multiply this by 30, I just type that in my calculator and it becomes 75. So it sounds like 75 inches makes up that 30%. Similarly, if I work with this next one, 84% of 880, so I know this whole thing, all 100% of it, is $880. That's how much that is. They want 84% of it. So I know what the total is. I just have to find this 84 part. So if I know that 100% of it is all 880, then 1% of it would be 8.8, which means 84% of it would mean I need 84 more of those. So if I type in 8.80 times 84, it gives me $739.20. The last one is a little bit different. They're looking for 84%, but they've given it to me. Here they've told me if the full amount is 100%, I don't know what that is. But they told me that 45% of it is 216, so I can use that piece. For this number 8, I see that they're telling me that 340 of the students are in 8th grade. So when I think bar model, I think that's everybody. All 340 of them represent 100%. But they only care about the 35% right now who take Spanish. The problem is, I don't know that amount. But if I know that everybody, all 100% of them, is 340 students, then 1% of them would be dividing them both by 100. That'll give me 3.4 students. But I need 35% of them, which means I need to take my 1%, multiply by 35. So if I do the same with 3.4, it gives me 119 students. That's who make up that 35%. I look at this laptop one. What they're saying on this one is that the laptop costs $620. So the whole laptop is $620. They say that there's an additional 6% tax. So if I can just find 6%, I can add it onto the price. If I know that 100% of the laptop's cost is $620, then I know that 1% of the laptop's cost is $6.20. And I know that 6%, if I multiply it by 6, is going to give me $37.20. But don't stop here, because you don't get to just pay tax to get the laptop. You also have to add $620 that you're going to pay plus that $37.20 to get the total. It ends up giving me $657.20 for the laptop. And that's our total. As we look at number 10, it says during the month of December, a business donated 9% of their profits to charity. If this amount, $31.50, goes to charity, what were the total profits? So I'm going to think of it again as a bar model. 100% of the profits is everything. They didn't give me that. In fact, that's what they want me to find. What they did give me is they told me that this 9% represents $3,150. So if I know 9% of the money is $31.50, I can find 1% of the money by dividing both by 9. If I take $3,150 and divide it by 9, it gives me $350. That's $350 per each percent. But I want to know the full 100%. So now if I multiply by 100 and I multiply this by 100, I'll get $35,000 as the total. The last one here is definitely a little bit harder because it's got a lot of parts to it. But again, I'll use my bar models. So it says a car dealer sold 1,500 vehicles over the course of the year. So over this full year, all of the vehicles was 1,500. Now what they told us is that 30% of them were used. But then they go on, they ask for the new vehicles. Okay, well, cars are either used or new. So if 30% are used, then 70% must be new. So let me find out what this is, since I'm going to need it. If I know that 100% of the vehicles is 1,500, and I'm trying to find 70% of the vehicles, if I can find 1% of the vehicles, which ends up being 15, because I divide them both by 100. If I multiply that by 70, what it'll give me is that the amount of new vehicles is 1,050. So now I know that there's 1,050 vehicles that are new. Let me read the rest of the question, though, because they said out of just the new ones, so if we're dealing with just the new, it looks like I've got a new total here of new cars. All of the new cars, or excuse me, all the new vehicles, there's 10,000 or 1,050 of them. They say that out of that, 20% of that amount were trucks. So if all the vehicles, all 100% of the vehicles is 1050, and I'm trying to find 20% of the vehicles, if I can find 1%, which I can, divide it by 100, 10.5, and then I need 20 of those, I multiply that 10.5 times 20, it gives me 210. So that means that 210 of all the vehicles are trucks.